welcome to another episode of Psychonaut Sessions. This is your host, Daniel Moeller. This is your home for all things psycho. Today we are going to cover Dreadstar number 36. We're going to go way back here, ladies and gentlemen, way back. Just by the way, depending upon whenever you've watched this, it's Friday night for me, so I'm having myself a little bit of daddy's medicine here, is what my kids like to call it, so please bear with me. But this comic is it for me. This is one of the origin points of my knowledge and the scope of comics. All of that broke open here. This was a root. So let's rewind a little bit here. Little Danny Moeller. I lived in a small town in the Ozarks, Mount Vernon, Missouri. I was probably around 8 or 9 years old, maybe 10. But we didn't have a whole lot of access to comics where we lived. We did have a grocery store that had a comics rack. It was mostly Marvel, maybe some DC. That was it. And it was all the basic stuff. So before I even got into superheroes, I was a G.I. Joe fanatic. Loved G.I. Joe. The toys, the comics, the cartoons. Couldn't get enough of G.I. Joe. And I heard that in nearby city, Springfield, which is about an hour away, there was a comic store called Comic Empire that was resided in one of the local malls. My mom was going shopping there. It was right around the time of my birthday, and I was like, Mom, please, instead of any toys, I don't want anything wrong with, just get me a stack of comics from this, what sounded like heaven to me. It was a whole store dedicated to nothing but comics. Imagine all that. There must be stuff there that we've never even heard of before, that I can't even imagine. I didn't even know that there could be anything that existed outside of Marvel DC. But also I was like, Mom, give me some G.I. Joe comics. I really want some G.I. Joe. But also just pick me up whatever. So my mom went to Comic Empire when she went shopping for whatever else she needed to, because everybody living in a small town back in the 80s, you had to travel an hour away to go shopping for whatever you needed. And came back with a stack of comics. A couple of them were, I think there were some Speed Racers. There might have even been a Terminator one. I need to hunt that one down. And Dreadstar. No G.I. Joes. I think because maybe Mom might have known Scarlet from G.I. Joe and saw this and saw that maybe that was Scarlet from G.I. Joe, or maybe it was mixed in. I don't know. I have no idea why she picked this up. I can say for certain, knowing who my mother is, she would not have picked this up for me. But wow. This was my entry point into the world of comics beyond just Marvel G.I. Joe. Before I even got into X-Men, before I got into anything else, this comic is it for me. It blew my mind. It was actually quite risque for me. I grew up in a very conservative household in a small town, and there were some risque things in here. So it just, we'll dive into it in a minute. But first, let me talk about First Comics. So I didn't even understand that there could be another company other than Marvel or DC. So it was pretty exciting that there was a comic book company other than Marvel DC. So First Comics was an American comic book company, and its time frame was from around 1983 to 1991. And it had a huge focus on creator-owned books, but still trying to have do something different, even have things that were for mature audiences, but still have a sort of mainstream appeal, even though they were different. They had a lot of really cool, unique items. A lot of wonderful things came out of First. Howard Chaykin's American Flag, which some people even say is the comic that preceded Watchmen, preceded Dark Knight Returns, in terms of setting the tone of the grim and gritty sort of era of comics in the 1980s. Grimjack with John Ostrander and Timothy Truman, who's an awesome artist. Nexus, Mike Barron. and Steve Rude, Badger, Dreadstar, which I'll get into in a minute, John Sable with Mike Grill. A lot of books that really have a legacy even to this day, including tons of others. So, an incredible host of creators. If I could own all of First Comics portfolio, I would be a happy man. In fact, I think that's probably what heaven would look like. In my mind, all the First Comics lived in that comic shop comics empire. And in little Danny Muller's mind, whew, that was the stuff. So, Dreadstar. Dreadstar is a character created and written and at first originally drawn by Jim Starlin. Started in Marvel's Epic line, which was Marvel's creator-owned line. A lot of cool stuff came out of that too, and then had some disputes with Marvel, and then moved to First Comics. Jim Starlin. If you don't know who Jim Starlin is, you should by now. So let's give you a little introduction to Jim Starlin. At Marvel, he created Warlock, which was an incredible series. A lot of correlations actually between the these two stories, but we'll get into in a minute, which later led to the introduction to Thanos. Did a lot of Silver Surfer stuff too, but Thanos was really that character that most everybody should know in terms of Infinity Gauntlet, which is the greatest comic storyline of all time. Really, it was the crossover event of all crossover events. Nothing could beat Infinity Gauntlet for me. Anything that came after just pales in comparison. And including the aftermath of Infinity Gauntlet, which included all kinds of characters that you know in Guardians of the Galaxy now, like Drax the Destroyer, Gamora, Adam Warlock, which hopefully will be coming into a theater soon near you. Did the Infinity War and a whole bunch of other. He still continues to do Thanos stuff. This is one of the better Thanos books that came out fairly recent. Well, I mean, like in the past 10 years or so, but it's an incredible book if you haven't read it. And Jim Starlin continues to make even some of his own creator stuff nowadays. You got to check him out, ladies and gentlemen. Jim Starlin is the shit. So this particular issue, though, is actually drawn by Luke McDonnell, who just did some random work. He did some work for First, but a lot of work for Marvel and DC. So he's done a lot of odd jobs in there. Nothing major that stands out. But for me, Luke McDonnell's artwork in this is incredible. It was like a defining template of artwork for me to study in the comics medium, and I just recently reread this, and I can tell my own art and where a lot of the tropes that I carry forward comes from. So anyway, let's dive in. So great cover, a lot of fighting of robots and da-da-da-da. So Dreadstar, let me get my whiskey out of the way, ladies and gentlemen. Dreadstar is a character. His full name is Vance Dreadstar. It's obviously some sort of a cosmic, storyline. And originally, he was a person with like many incredible powers, like the strength of like 15 ordinary men. He could absorb extra power from external sources. And had remarkable self-healing, fairly generic kind of stuff. And earlier in the series, he fought against something called the Church of Instrumentality, which is very similar to the Church of Universal Truth in the Warlock series, actually. So there's a lot of commonalities here that Starlin, I think, started here, but he wasn't able to do with what he wanted with Warlock, and I think that's kind of where Dreadstar ended up, which I respect. Totally. I mean, Jim Starlin is almost like a god to me. I mean, he created Thanos and Warlock, which are two of some of my favorite characters in the mainstream medium. So there was this war with the Church of Instrumentality, and then Dreadstar went into like a 2-year coma, which I think was like the break between Epic and First. And then Starlin handed over the drawing duties to Luke McDonnell, and then inked by Val Merrick. Mm-hmm. So here, basically, Dreadstar and his crew are trying to track down Lord Lastlaugh. So Dreadstar actually works for this new empire that's taken over, and he works for the kind of like the it's almost like the CIA of this particular or special operations group for this particular empire. And these are his compatriots. So what they're doing is they're trying to track this fellow down called Lord Lastlaugh, who's basically just a terrorist. So he's running on some rooftops here with his buddies. And so just very dynamic, I think. I mean, Luke McDonnell is. It may be simple, but I of course I grew up with this, so just he just gets the angles just right. His backgrounds aren't too detailed, but it's just enough to kind of give you this alien feel of where they're at on this planet in this kind of urban environment. So they start walking through, and all these robots attack. And so this is just kind of like the introductory of the characters, right? So Dreadstar starts taking them out, and I know that a lot of well, we'll get to that in just a second. Actually, we'll get into some of the letters in just a second. So Willow is this lady here that kind of has the same uniform as Scarlet from G.I. Joe, but she's a telepath, telekinetic, and apparently is one of the most powerful of the group according to Dreadstar. And she has this like little monkey dude that sits on her shoulder. And I assumed, I don't know this because I haven't actually read all of the Dreadstar books, and I can't remember a lot of them from before. This is the only one I remember the most, but I think that this like little monkey dude feeds information to her because she's actually blind. So she knows what to look for, but she's also telepath and telekinetic too. So I don't know. And then this other guy who is Fix, who's basically just kind of like an Iron Man kind of dude. He just has guns and stuff on him. And this is that time in the early 80s, I should say. This is 88, I believe. Yeah, 88, the magical year for me. So that, yeah, I was in second grade in 88. You know, this is the time in comics when it's just like, just put a bunch of guns on them. That'll be cool. So just kind of goes on a rundown of the characters. Basically, after fighting all these robots, they find out that Lord Lastlaugh has taken off. But Willow's going to stay behind and kind of dig into these data banks to see if she can get any clues. Dreadstar goes back up to their floating citadel in space, which is kind of like their hub. They call it the island above the planet. So he beams in, Star Trek style, and this guy, Odi, O-E-D-I. I have no idea how to spell that name. Odi, Oeda. I need another drink. It's an alien dude with a cat head. Okay, he's the leader of this kind of CIA task force unit or whatever they are. And Dreadstar's trying to talk to him about one of the other team members. What's her name? Anyway, Violet. Her name's Violet. And that maybe she's drunk. She's like been drunk a lot. Yeah, me too. And does drugs and stuff, and that she's unfit for duty. And this guy's like, I know, we're looking into it, but really, we need everybody on all hands on deck, because this Lord Lastlaugh character, apparently in the issues before, has been causing a lot of trouble, killing a lot of people, and they're trying to get rid of him so they can stabilize this new empire. All right. And then we're taken to this like pleasure cruise ship. If you've seen Fifth Element, it's kind of similar, but it's like way more debaucherous. This, as in second grade, just seeing this like orgy place where these people go in space to just like be scantily clad, practically naked, and doing drugs. Just it blew my mind. I knew that there's no way my mother could have looked at this book at all in any way, shape, or form before handing it to me. She didn't review it, but I wasn't gonna say anything. But wow, I was looking at this, and just new vistas of reality were opening to little Danny Moeller. Anyway, so all these people are partying, and then there's this invisible gas that comes in that's odorless. You can't really detect it, you can't see it. It starts causing them all to basically choke and start vomiting and dying. And this was another thing, as a second grader, I'm just looking at all these people choking and dying, and just wow, blowing my mind. I mean, I must have studied these panels for hours on end. So, Dreadstar fix, Willow still at the databanks, and that Violet character he was talking about earlier. They go to this pleasure cruise ship, and everybody's just sitting and dead in their own vomit, and it's just like, I mean, God, as a second grader, that's just like, whoa. The coloring on this, the coloring, colored by Ken Fedinowicz. Really interesting. I think it might have been, at least in some cases, actual marker instead of the usual printing process of coloring. Just especially with the flesh, there's these, there's just these marks that looks like that it could have been with marker, which some comics were done with marker. So anyway, first notes. This is mostly just like marketing stuff. They're just saying what's coming out next. Nexus 44, Badger number 35, Star Slayer graphic novel. The ads in this comic really stuck out to me. These ads are embedded into my brain. I will probably be on my deathbed, and the ads in this comic will be some of the last things I ever take with me to the grave. Whisper number 13 with a new artist, Spider, writer creator Stephen Grant. I believe Whisper. Did Whisper start someplace else? I don't know. I know Whisper started in an anthology, or at least their Whisper got her start in one of the first anthologies. It's so hard with the company name. One of the first anthology books called First Adventures. I give up. What a horrible name for a freaking comics company, but I love it. So they're in this. So we're back to the storyline. All these people are dead in their own vomit. This girl Violet is just kind of stunned, and they're talking about how how efficient this was. And this girl Violet is like, yeah, it was efficient, and starts bursting out laughing. So we get this impression she's off her rocker. She's an addict, and she's just off her rocker. She's just like, this is too much for her. And Dreadstar grabs her. Violet, get a hold of yourself. She's like, get your filthy hands off me. And she activates her powers, which are some kind of like photon sort of powers, and she takes off. Fix is like, let her go, man. There's nothing we could do for her. And he's like, for once I agree, Fix. So anyway, we go back to Willow, and she has this intelligence expert with her that's part of the agency, and she's like, hey, I've found all these documents, and I wanted to see what you thought. And it looks like Lord Lastlaugh is maybe trying to set us up or something, but it says that the government has been doing all these horrible things, like using slave labor. At one point, the government allowed this entire planet's population to die because producing the medicine wasn't cost effective. And there's another that said the military used nuclear weapons on a planet that refused to pay the taxes levied against it. All these accusations. She's like, I mean, I wanted you to check these allegations and see if there's any truth to them. And he's like, there's no need. And she's like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? Is that true? And he's like, yeah, it's true. He's like, you knew? Yeah, I knew. And she's like, does Odie know? That cat-headed dude, Oda. He's like, yeah. And she's like, what the hell? Why haven't you guys been doing anything about this? He's like, whatever. You have to, cut your losses. This is better than the tyranny that we had before. And, we consider, economic matters more important than human lives. And you need to, like, suck it up and stop being, a little kid about this, and blah, blah, blah. So they have this argument. So anyway, back to Dreadstar and Fix. They basically kind of find out that through the ship's computers that they're able to track Lord Last Laugh to this like spaceport. So they go to the spaceport. This thing blew my mind as a kid. I mean, this is actually pretty cool. This is actually pretty detailed. I mean, I draw on small size paper, like 9 by 12, but I recently just did some pages on 11 by 17, and that's still not even a ton of room. Not only is it just very clear, but there's not extraneous detail. It's just like really good. I really give props to Luke McDonnell. And the ink, God, man, I need to remember that. Val Merrick on this work. I think they did a great job. Actually, I think there's some places where Val Merrick on the inking is kind of like, what's happening there? But you can tell the layouts of this are really good. So anyway, they're in this spaceport, trying to look for him. There's people around. They find Lord Laugh's another funny thing with names. Lord Last Laugh's ship. A robot is like alert, intruder. So they start attacking. A lot of just like robots just being used for menial tasks. They charge in, and we get another thing, ads. So this is another thing of ads that blew my mind. I just like, what is this stuff? This guy with these. This is before I was even really into X-Men or anything. So like Wolverine wasn't even in my consciousness. This Badger, or is this I don't even know who this is. I don't, but this is a Badger graphic novel, an ad for a Badger graphic novel that I want to. It's on my want list, as well as Nexus number 45. I don't know what this is, but for to a second grader, for some reason I thought maybe this was like a high school comic, like it was a comic of like this weird high school with all these weird mutant creature people, and it was just insane. And so I didn't understand what it was, but these images activated my imagination like nothing ever before. I mean, I was just, again, whole new mode of consciousness coming in with this stuff. Broke up in my mind, a mind breaker, breaking open the head. So yeah, someday I want to pick up all the Nexus and Badger stuff too, along with Whisper. So anyway, so they charge in, they're fighting robots. Da 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 da. There's a grenade that goes off, and it turns out Lord Last Laugh was kind of hiding. So this is Lord Last Laugh. This image is freaking incredible. I must have stared at this image for hours on end. This guy is creepy as hell. This is a really creepy image. He's just sitting there laughing maniacally. So he's just this like weird old man that's kind of like the Joker in a way. He's just like a homicidal maniac that basically is just killing for the sake of killing. It's like a cosmic Joker, and quite efficient at fighting too. Dreadstar is supposed to be like one of the best fighters in the galaxy. Kind of takes him out easily. So he takes off. That Violet lady is taken after him. And so in this time in the Dreadstar cosmology, people with powers are not looked upon very positively. Just they're looked on as freaks and monsters, even though they're tasked to protect everyone. So it's kind of like a little bit of an X-Men vibe there. Some bystanders see that she's attacking Lord Last Laugh, who looks like this old man. And so this guy is like, oh my god, they're attacking this old man. We got to protect him. So takes this paint can, because there's happens to be a robot standing nearby, spraying paint somewhere, and throws it at Violet, knocks her in the head. So of course Last Laugh gets away, jumps down into this basement area, this service passageway, and so Dreadstar and Fix go down there, but they lose him because it's like a maze. And they come back up, and this guy's sitting there bragging about what he did. Fix, throws him against the wall. Where did she go? Blah, blah. It's like, I don't know, man. So Violet took off after the whole, she got knocked into the head. So Dreadstar and Fix are like, well, we lost. Okay, so what do we do? Let's go back and lick our wounds. And this is another thing that blew my mind. I was like, oh my god, the heroes lost. What? This is awesome. So basically, they try to track down Violet, and they go to this planet that's just kind of like this rundown ghetto. And they go into this hotel. It's obviously like a rent by the hour kind of hotel. And the owner takes them in, and there's pills, liquor, and they find a video, a tape recorder, some kind of recorder, and it's Violet, and she's basically giving her last, well, not her will and testament, but just her final words. Basically saying it's too much. For the past couple of years, I've just seen so much death, and I'm so alone, and everybody around me keeps dying, and I can't take any more. No more, no more, no more. And they click it off, and they go into the room where she is, and she's lying there dead. And that's the end of the end. Like, I'm in second grade and reading this going, what? This is crazy. This is crazy. And I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but you can really see what I'm talking about with the flesh. So it really looks like a marker is being heavily used as the coloring for this, which I kind of like. I actually think it's pretty cool. It looks kind of neat. It always gives us like interesting texture. So yeah, blew my mind. It's just like I just did not. My brain couldn't contain this. So Dreadlocks is the letters page, and what's interesting about this is that it's just a bunch of letters to Jim Starlin saying, "Jim, Dreadstar sucks now. What the hell?" So he allowed all these letters to be published. I like Dreadstar better when he had powers, because apparently in this new iteration he doesn't have as much powers. Where's his old costume? Because it used to be more superhero-y. Now it's just like he's got this cloak and it's dark. Why aren't you drawing the book? You know, because he passed it off to Luke McDonnell. So on and so forth. Every letter in here is just absolutely negative, and he has no response. He doesn't respond to anything. He even highlights one of the gripes. One gripe. Vanth spends 2 years in a coma, and what does he wake to find? Odie and Willow in the same drab clothes. That's what. So he just highlights all, and if you know Jim Starlin, this is his personality. He's like, yeah, bring it on. And that's what I love about Jim Starlin. It's like, yeah, you want to complain about my shit? Sure. Yeah, I'll show it off. I don't care. I'm going to keep doing what I'm going to do anyway. So yeah, someday I'm going to pick up the next issue, because apparently it's Willow kind of taking on the government, and all of the atrocities that have been going on. So that's cool. And we get this ad here for some other cool stuff like American Flag. Oh, and I forgot, First Comics also were the original ones to do Lone Wolf and Club, and they did a whole bunch of like Elric stuff, and Roy Thomas even wrote for them and everything. So some really cool stuff. And look, this is about ready to fall right off. I can't open this again. That's why I'm doing this. And then on the back page, Mike Grell's Star Slayer. This was amazing to me too. I was like, what? Space pirates? What? So this was my introduction to Mike Grell. So anyway, Dreadstar number 36. Love this book. It might be one of the more mainstream books that I do on this channel. I don't know, and I know this one was a little longer than usual, but I had to give some special attention, because this book is important to me. It's a milestone in my brain. It'll never get old. Love this book. I don't even love the rest of the series as much as I just love this one book. It's just because I don't think I ever read another Dreadstar comic again until like 10 years later. I didn't have access. So great stuff. Got to check out some First Comics if you haven't already. That's all for today. Like and subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. You can go in my shop and get some of my own comics. And for all intents and purposes, keep it psycho.